Hello everyone. This is going to be just a quick little demo and look at the asset exporter that comes with the V1 Freeform rigging tools. This was designed as a general purpose or asset exporter, so static meshes, character animations, whatever type you want. Right now, character animation and dynamic animations are the only ones that have been really fleshed out, but it would be pretty easy to modify. These are essentially like little profiles that tell it what it should do to whatever asset's hooked into it and how it should export that. So it'd be fairly easy to kind of flesh these other ones out to make them usable as just a general purpose asset exporter rather than just a character animation exporter. With that in mind, you'll notice that we have this create export group and create asset. These, if it was a purely animation exporter, would probably be like animation name character. For the create asset, it would be the character. The export group is the animation name. That's kind of the general convention that we've used at V1. But since it's a general purpose thing, I've kind of generalized those names down to the asset being what is the thing in the scene that you want to export, and the group being a group of assets, a way of just kind of organizing multiple different types of export or multiple exports from a single scene. So if you had a complex cinematic setup or like a big multi-character thing set up, you could have each scene in each shot, I guess, in your one scene as a different export group, which would create a different animation for it. And then each character can be set up to say 4 characters are in one shot and 2 characters are in another one. One of the shots can be told to only export 2 of the characters, and one of them can be only told to export 4 of the characters. So you have a lot of flexibility here. So let's just take a quick look at how you set it up. It's pretty straightforward. Export groups are just data. They don't rely on anything in the scene, so you can just create an export group right off. And we have asset details down here. We'll give you kind of the breakdown of both your asset and your export group. You want to select for a character, the root joint of the character, of the actual deformation skeleton that you want to export. Or make sure it's on character animation. In Maya, it defaults to being on character animation. This is, I guess, one of the benefits of using C# is being able to use the same UI everywhere. So this is the same exporter UI I have in 3ds Max as well for our studio tools. So we have an asset. We'll name it Demo Guy. And then we have the definition. This is just like the idle. You can take a quick look. Simple little idle animation for him. If the export path isn't defined, it's going to be driven by the exporter definition in your tools config. If you want more detail of how this breaks down, that's in the tools config setup video. But for export purposes, the export pattern is looking at how it will navigate backwards from the folder that the Maya file is in to figure out where the FBX file should go. And then the name of the file is asset and definition. Definition is just my internal name for group. Group was a friendlier name to expose to a user. So in this case, this animation will be called demo guy _ idle. And if you wanted that to be idle _ demo guy, you just switch this bracket or square angled bracket definition and swap it to the other side of asset. And then the export pattern is saying 3 dots, a slash, and then a folder name. Says to go backwards as many directories as it takes to get to the folder that's called working. And 2 dots in the slash means to go back one more directory. So we'll go back to the working directory and then one more back. And that's where we're going to export this out to. A match directory looks at every directory that came from working or was after working, and it recreates that structure in the final directory. So if we had like a working animation, or I guess working unarmed combat folder, the export would, well, I guess better description here. If we had like animations working unarmed combat as the folder for the Maya file, this will go back to that working directory, go back one more, it will be in the animations directory. And then it will copy that combat working structure in animations. This final export would be animations combat, or unarmed combat, and then demo got idle right now. The video that goes over this stuff has an example of that written out if you want a little clearer picture of exactly how this works. You don't have to worry about this if you just decide to tell it exactly where you want the file to be saved, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to dump it out to his base folder. So it'll just drop into here. And that's all you have to do to get a basic animation set up. There are modular ways of modifying the animation as well. So if you right click on either of these guys, I'm fighting with my cat a little bit right now. Cat. This has decided to lay on my mouse. Okay. So if we right click on this, either the group or the character, we can decide to add properties to the entire animation. So again, if this was a cinematic and it had multiple characters, we can apply a single property that would apply to every character that's in it. Or we can apply properties to specific characters within a group, and that will apply to that character no matter what group it's in. So we can do like remove root animation and 0 character. This is generally something that we would do for cinematics, so that wherever the character is in space, this guy doesn't have a root controller. None of his IK stuff is going to move along with him. So if he was animated off in space here, this would remove any kind of root animation that's on him and then 0 him back into world space before it exports the animation. The exporter works by just duplicating off a version of his skeleton. Oops, wrong key. A version of his skeleton, constraining it all to his actual bind skeleton, baking that down, and then any properties that run on that duplicate of the skeleton. So you're never actually modifying your character, what's in the scene, while this process happens. You get a quick view of what properties are on your character in here and any kind of additional information you may need to add to it. So we have this rotation curve property, which we use for weapons to convert a 360-degree rotation on a barrel, or a 90-degree rotation on a barrel, whatever value you input, into a 0 to 1 value on an attribute on the root of the character. So in order to have the barrels, like a rotating barrel, fire for like a Gatling gun type of weapon, having an animation drive that is kind of a pain, because you want to be able to stop at any point and then go backwards and spin it in the direction you want. So this is just a way of breaking that spin down into a value that we use in the engine to define how that spin should actually be applied. But we can animate it as if we're spinning the barrel itself, and it converts that data down for us, so we don't have to worry about that. And as you can see, each one of these export properties has its own little data UI. Animation curves group is, again, something that we use specifically for driving game characters. This one's a bit more technical to go into exactly what it does, and unless you have an animation system, an engine like we do, you probably don't need to use it. But essentially it's looking at the motion of the root in the animation and creating a curve based on these values that you, or these properties that you change. Again, this is just anything you can really think of you can do with these properties. You can make new properties to modify whatever animation on whatever individual joints, however you see fit with the whole export system. So that's going into a lot of detail when I just want to export a basic character, single animation. I don't need to worry about the majority of that stuff. All I need to do is worry that there's this idle, it's got demo guy, and it's being saved off to demo guy here. So I hit export. And we've got demo guy idle FBX file kicked up for us. Go ahead and remove these. And there's also this auto setup button, which will find every character that's in the scene and create a single group. And it's just kind of build that structure real quick for you. Oh, and it auto flags UC name. So UC name will just use the name of the Maya file as the name of essentially the animation. If you want a custom range, you can set a custom range. When you check the box, it will automatically grab the values that are your timeline is framed to. If it's not the exact frames you want, the middle button here will reframe on these frames. Then the left button sets the left value, the start value, to whatever frame you're currently highlighted on. Same with the right one. This idle almost certainly doesn't need to be 60 frame animation, but that's what I made it as. And then simple filters. We'll pretend we have multiple characters and multiple animations in this one file. So filters, if things get complex. Actually looks like these are kind of backwards right now. Well, the filters are not working. Apparently it's been a while since I've used these. Oh, the filters are case sensitive. There we go. That is something that I should fix, because when you're quickly searching for something, you generally don't care about perfect case matching. Anyway, so filters, case sensitive. Quickly find whatever assets you want if you have a really complex scene. Again, for character animation, you're generally going to have a character and a single animation in it. And then there's also sorting. So you can see the sort number on the side here is zeros and ones. So you can kind of define what order all this goes in. This is move up, move down. And so you see if I go down to like 6 and I say I want to move up, it will look at the item that's above it and then move it one value higher than that. So from 6 I actually go to -1, or from 4 I'll actually go to 0. That's just to give you kind of a behavior that you probably more expect when you're sorting these, rather than if I'm at 7, the next one is -1, I don't have to press this 7 times to get it down to be lower. And besides the sort of the name here, then it will sort off of alphabetical order. Same sorting applies here. And that is everything for the exporter. All this information saves in your scene. I should close all of that. So I'll prompt right back up. You save your scene. You can quickly export. If you know your export is already set up, export all button will just run through all the character groups, export each one of them individually that are in your scene. And for a quick look behind the scenes before we wrap this up, I'm going to the node editor. So off the root of this guy, we have a character animation asset and the export definition asset, all built off of our core metadata network. And then any properties that we apply will get added in as connections onto these nodes. So this is again just a quick way of code-wise being able to navigate and find all the animations in the scene, all the characters' animations that are set up for export in the scene, all the actual animations, and then any properties that are on them. Just a quick way of navigating and finding all of that information and being able to modify it as you need through code very quickly. There's not a back and forth operation between this UI. So if I modify stuff manually in the scene, you'll see that these properties show up, but they still exist. If I just close and reopen it, it'll refresh off of the scene state, and you'll get an update, or you'll see the proper data. That's only if you're actually manually editing stuff. If you manage everything through the UI, the UI updates in tune with what you do, as well as the scene. That is the exporter.